The Corpus and the Grineer have been at the center of Warframe since the very beginning. Two empires locked in a constant cold war, skirmishing over territory, resources, and occasionally they even united to face much stronger threats. In this video, I want to compare them together. But instead of comparing their armies or arguing about which faction would win in a full-scale war, like I had before, I want to explore a question most players never ask. Which one is actually better to live under? Not as an ultra-powerful Tenno, but just as a normal dude. You choose the Corpus, a hyper-capitalist megacorp where your first birthday present is usually a lifetime of debt. Or the Grineer, a militaristic clone empire where your job options range from soldier who dies young to soldier who dies slightly later. It's a tough choice, but surprisingly, not always as one-sided as it may seem. So let's break down what life is really like as an average Corpus and Grineer civilian, and which empire gives you the better chance of surviving until retirement. If either of them even have a retirement, that was a trick question because I know for a fact that neither of these people have any retirements for anybody. You're working until you die, baby. When it comes to futuristic settings, there's usually something redeemable, even if in general it does seem bad. Like Star Wars, while we see a lot of pretty terrible things throughout the movies and the IP in general, there are a lot of things that maybe point to it being not so bad to live as a Republic citizen as long as it isn't during a time of war. Another interesting setting is somewhere like Mass Effect. While yes, during the events of Mass Effect, it would suck to live in that universe. But when the Reapers aren't invading, it actually looks like it'd be a pretty alright place to live, with lots of advancements that would make life easier, maybe even more fun. However, when we look at the universe of Warframe, and specifically look at the two largest empires in the game, I find it very hard to find any redeemable perks of living under their rule, at least for the average individual. You might find people who go around saying, man, I wished I lived in Star Wars, but I guarantee you no one is saying they want to live in the Origin system, unless they believe that they're going to be a Tenno. And if that's the case, I don't think they've really thought about how terrible the lives of the Tenno are. Regardless, this video is going to ultimately be which sucks less, and not which empire is better. So I'll be absolutely reaching for any positives I can find. So don't get irritated when I do that, because it's what must be done. So if I mention some dumb, incredibly unimportant perks, understand that it's just what has to be mentioned here, because there are almost no perks. The Grineer are a matriarchal society that almost functions like an ant colony. They all worship a pair of queens, so I guess that's more than an ant colony would. Not important. And most of the Grineer Empire is male, but there also being some female representation in extremely specific roles, such as heavy gunners and snipers. Every single Grineer is a clone. They're cloned from other Grineer soldiers, leading to a constant degradation in the cloning process. That is leading to the health of the average Grineer to be worse and worse. During the cloning process, Grineers are given some sort of sciencey thing that makes them more loyal to the queen. I'm not sure if it's just because they clone Grineers who are already very loyal, passing the trait on, or if it's something that they do to the clones while they're being created. The Grineer society itself is super militaristic, with essentially every single Grineer being taught to fight and given combat experience in some way, even if they are just a factory worker or a farmer or even someone who's in charge of the cloning process. While I'm not exactly sure on how it works, I believe it functions much like the country Eritrea, where every single citizen is forced to join the military. However, most aren't actually soldiers and just work as other things, but can be mobilized for war if it's required. Within Grineer society, there is extreme xenophobia, and they pretty much hate anything that exists that isn't Grineer, except for the twin queens, who are both Orokin, which Grineer are completely loyal to, and like a lot, and do whatever they say. When it comes to how the empire actually functions, I would say that it's pretty close to communism, since resources are provided by the state, and while every single job that exists is just serving the state, or to be more specific, the twin queens. Within the Grineer Empire, I'm pretty sure that there is not a single thing that's independently owned, or if people can have possessions even. I know for sure there aren't any independent businesses. Everything exists for the benefit of the queens. Funnily enough, while the queens are ultimately in charge, there is an extreme lack of any other female leadership within the ranks of the Grineer, with Kayla D. Thane being the only notable Grineer that's a woman, and she's not even in charge of anyone, she just has a game show and is a celebrity. So, and most of the generals and high-ranking military members, or all of them, are all men. So I'm not sure if it's 100% right saying it's a matriarchy, and maybe monarchy would be closer to being correct. I'm not sure on that one, but please let me know in the comments below. Anyway, that's a very basic overview of the Grineer Empire. This should serve the purpose we need with this video. I just want you guys to have some background information, just in case, you know, some of the people watching are new to the game, or possibly haven't ever even played Warframe before. In the Corpus world, wealth pretty much means everything. The Grineer are the representation on how bad the worst version of communism can get, and the Corpus are an example of the very worst form of capitalism. Along with that, the leadership of the Corpus is a lot more confusing than the leadership of the Grineer. Instead of just having a pair of queens, who are the ultimate leaders, the Corpus have a board of directors, who make decisions that affect the entirety of Corpus society. There are 14 members on this board, with it generally being comprised of the wealthiest and most prominent members of Corpus society, so the 14 members are subject to change. The most powerful single man in the Corpus is Freud Beck, who is the chairman of the board of directors. It's unclear what powers being the chairman gives him exactly, but he does, in some unclear ways, have more power than everyone else on the board. This race for wealth leads to Corpus society having pretty much two extremes: extremely wealthy, or so far in debt that you'll never actually own anything as long as you live. I don't think Corpus society actually has a middle class, which is absolutely horrific. It shows how terrible life there is. Soldiers are usually just debt slaves, essentially bought by whoever they serve, from breeding farms or clone factories, and if you aren't lucky enough to be a soldier, you're probably a slave working in mines with terrible safety relegations, or in a factory where there's a high chance you're going to lose an arm, or a limb, or whatever, and your insurance is not going to pay for it. A positive thing about corporate society is how different it might be from city to city. Since pretty much every area is controlled by a different leader, that does cause some conditions for those living there to be much better or much worse, depending on whose territory that they're operating within. Something interesting to point out is that all the leaders of the Corpus are also men, with none of the board of directors being a woman, as far as I can tell. And one last note is that in this video, we are ignoring Parvos Granum and his sect of the Corpus, since it's basically just a whole new faction. Let's assume for this first comparison that you're just an average citizen of both empires. First, let's talk about the Grineer. First thing you do is walk out of your cloning vat, and you're immediately being yelled at to get into formation. While in formation, a higher ranking Grineer walks around, viewing you and thousands of other Grineer alongside you, searching for any significant defects or issues. Thankfully, you pass this test, and are seen as healthy and a strong future soldier. After this, you get sent to a military training facility. For the next 3 years of your life, you have to complete the brutal training of Grineer soldiers, and every single day, you must watch propaganda videos about the Twin Queens and about how Grineer society would fall without them. Even during training, propaganda is played over loudspeakers, making it clear where your loyalties must lie if you ever plan to leave the military complex you're training in alive. It isn't all bad though. Even if you are subject to brutal training the weakest will not survive. You know you will always have food on the table when you get home, and occasionally you even get to watch Kayla D. Thame punish those who betrayed the Queens in her exciting and high stakes game show. Eventually, since you don't suck balls, you'll complete this training and be moved into the larger Grineer society, finally getting familiar with Grineer that weren't your original batchmates. You get assigned a non-combat role as a factory worker on Ceres. Every day you have long shifts, constantly working your ass off to help improve the strength of the Grineer Empire. All you have to look forward to after you finish your work is a warm meal, well, warm if you're lucky, and maybe the chance to catch the most recent Kayla D. Thame broadcast. Throughout your work, you constantly feel an itch for violence, like you shouldn't be stuck just as a factory worker, but should instead be a soldier heading into battle. I mean, the entirety of your early life was all about fighting, and now you have no outlets to actually do it. You don't realize that you're one of the lucky ones. You got picked to work the factory because you were smarter, you were more able. They saw worth in you beyond just a soldier to throw into the meat grinder. But you don't know that. Only the soldiers on the front lines do. And well, they don't know that for long before their deaths. This is how you go throughout your life. Laboring in the factory, making weapons for the soldiers that you wish you were with, and your only luxury being the meals always provided to you. and catching a broadcast of KLD Thames games. Sometimes, even a few of the Grineer you've grown close with have a few brawls in your free time, just to feel flesh against your knuckles. Few times, the brawls went a bit too far and someone died, but the overseer of your operations never asked too much. I mean, another dead worker never meant too much. Many died while on the job in front of him, and he didn't care about them, so one dying after work was even less important. Because of your lucky assignment in a factory, you actually reached a rather old age for a Grineer, having many birthdays that you never celebrated. Throughout your life, though, you noticed that your body was working worse and worse. Your face was actively decaying, and your skin falling off. Because of this, your work at the factory began to suffer. Because you weren't getting as much work done, your food rations began to lower as well. By anyone else's standards, you'd still be young, in your prime even. But since you're a Grineer, death was approaching quickly, and your body was falling apart before you ever even reached the age of 30. Some Grineer, who had proven themselves valuable to the Twin Queens, have had cyber optic attachments added to their bodies, ones to fight the aging and increase their strength. But you were never that special. Just a good worker, but not game-changing. Finally, while trying to dump waste into vats of acid, your legs give out and you fall in alongside the waste, effectively ending your life. By Grineer standards, you lived a more than full life, but in the back of your head, you were constantly wishing for a glorious death on the battlefield, dying in the name of your Twin Queens. Now, let's put ourselves into the shoes of a Corpus citizen. Not a soldier, but just a hard-working individual on Venus. In the Grineer, the only way to be created is through cloning. However, in Corpus society, the two most common ways of coming into existence are breeding farms, what are those, and cloning. For this example, let's just go the breeding farm route, because well, if you were a clone, you wouldn't really be unique at all, and plus the clones usually staff the Corpus military and aren't just the typical workers. Anyway, as a young child, you weren't special at all, and didn't receive any parental love. All you had were caretakers, who were constantly tasked with feeding you propaganda on the importance of wealth, more specifically the importance of wealth for the Grineer Empire, and how to better serve Corpus society, and how you could make the Corpus Empire stronger. They also continually mentioned that while you're growing up, how important it was to remember that you're completely in debt, and would have to work for one of the board of directors to make up for that debt. A Corpus director had paid for your cost of living growing up, and your caretakers made sure that you knew everything that you had, that your entire existence was dependent on their funds. So you should be more than happy working for them to pay it off. Truthfully, you knew right from the start you'd never pay off this debt, and you'd probably be working rigorous labor for the rest of your life without ever having anything to your name. After becoming of age and leaving the care of the farm, you immediately get sent to work in the mines on Venus. And that's what you must do for the rest of your life. Food and housing are not provided, but you also aren't getting paid for any of your shifts. You're only working off your debt every 10-hour shift. This leads to you picking up another job in Orvalis to try and make ends meet. The housing there was extremely cheap, as long as you don't mind living in a single room and having shared utilities. Along with that, you have to pay for your own food. Well, to be completely honest, food isn't that important. So some days you would just go without eating. And on the days you were starving, a meal made from the local wildlife would be more than you need. Weird rat-looking mutated creatures always tasted great grilled. This life of work will, well, be pretty much your entire life, with nothing else really going for you. Working non-stop and down to the bone, you feel some kinship with those around you, and occasionally, if you manage to actually save up some money from your second job, you can go out drinking with a group of friends and watch some different broadcasts at the bar when you get a chance. If you manage to save some credits from your second job to actually buy some luxury items in your incredibly small room, like a mat to sleep on and a toaster or something. I don't know why I said toaster. Thinking about toast, I'm not sure, guys. I was just thinking about toast. A small here would probably make more sense, but for some reason I just keep thinking about toasters right now. As you continue your life, you somehow become more and more in debt to the Corpus Corpo that you work for, and instead of questioning it, you just continue living your life. Thankfully, since you aren't a Grineer, your body doesn't constantly deteriorate. You get to be a slave for much, much longer. While since you're living terribly, your lifespan won't exactly be long. You'll easily make it to your 40s or 50s before collapsing from exhaustion in the company mine and ultimately dying. Alright, just to quickly cover this, the last section I want to talk about is if you're a foreign worker. So for example, you don't exactly align with the Grineer or the Corpus, but somehow and someday you find yourself being under the umbrella of one of their empires. I'll be honest, this is an easy choice, and not something I'm going to talk about a ton here, because chances are is that the Grineer would just instantly kill you for not being Grineer, and that's if you're lucky. It's also extremely likely that they make you a slave in the worst possible conditions, and you'd probably die within a year. Being a foreign worker for the Grineer Empire essentially translates to torture, death, and slavery with no room for pretty much anything else. With the Corpus, on the other hand, there's actually a chance you'll be treated better than normal Corpus citizens, especially if you have some sort of valuables you can trade. On top of that, as long as you don't make any shitty deals, you wouldn't actually find yourself in debt, which would place you in the top 10% richest of the Corpus society. Well, actually probably higher than that even. So if you do happen to be unaligned with the Grineer or Corpus and are being forced to choose between the two on which to live under, just always choose Corpus, guys, because, well, there won't be much living under the Grineer. So when it comes to picking who you'd rather be a citizen of, I actually think it's a pretty hard choice. As Grineer, you'll probably find more brotherhood, which means you'll actually have a lot of friends, or something like friends, and you'll always have a place to sleep and a meal to eat as long as you're still useful to the queens. The bad part is that you won't have much comfort beyond that. You'll die young, and you'll have awful genetic defects that are extremely painful, and there will be next to no sympathy for you if anything ever goes wrong while working. You'll also never be able to find love or anything like that, since you are all clones of each other, and I don't know what kind of weird incest shit that would be. When it comes to the Corpus, you'll also basically just be a slave. However, you might find ways to scrounge up some luxury items for yourself throughout your life. While friendship will be harder to find in Corpus society, it certainly wouldn't be impossible. On top of that, there are many more consumer goods present in Corpus society, so like I said, if you can manage to scrounge up some side credits, there will be some nice things in life for you. While it's extremely unlikely, you could possibly find love and start a family, but you'd have to find a way to support that lifestyle. Again, that's something that is completely impossible for a Grineer, so it is a perk even though it's basically impossible for a Corpus too. Finally, one of the largest positives will be that your body isn't quickly falling apart as you age, and you won't have an unbelievable amount of genetic defects that are extremely painful. Of course, living much longer could also be seen as a negative when it comes to this situation. A lot of people would probably rather die than live to 60 as basically a slave, even in really bad conditions. Honestly, after making this video, I truly don't know what the better option is here. Both of these are absolutely horrible, and I'd hate to live under either of these empires, but let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Yeah. Engagement. If you've made it this far into the video, consider leaving a like, subscribe, and also leaving this new hype feature. I'm not really sure what it is, but if you hype up the video, it will actually do better in the algorithm. So if you have like hype points or whatever the hell they're called, I'd appreciate you using them. Like I said, I don't actually know what they do, but they help me, I think. But anyway, I'll leave the final decision up to you guys, because I don't know if I can really pick. I'd probably lean towards the Corpus, since I'd say there's more potential to be happy, but there's also more potential for your life to be absolutely terrible for a much longer time. So I'm not sure if it's truly the right choice. Also, don't forget, being a Grineer might feel more fulfilling, since they're so dedicated to the Tone Queens, so dying in their service might actually make you happy. While I don't think there's any way to spin being a debt slave as being fulfilling. But yeah, that's all I really got for this one, and the best thing about this topic is that it can be talked about so much more. Like I just mentioned 2 specific scenarios. You compare how it is to serve the military of both factions, or how nice it is to be within the top brass of the factions. There's literally so much opportunity for discussion, and that's what makes me really like topics when it comes to Warframe. Hopefully we get more in-depth information about the Corpus and Grineer someday, like about how their societies function and how it all goes, because I feel like we're still missing a ton of information about these guys, even after all these years they've, been in the game, like a decade now, more than a decade. But it's also exciting to think about how much more we have to learn when it comes to these factions, and it's something to keep looking forward to. But yeah, that's all I got for this one, guys. Thank you to everyone who made it this far. I really, really do appreciate it, and you're the greatest. Once again, I'm not sure if this video is as good as normal because I'm not making it in my home setup. This is like my third new setup in the past week, so I apologize if there's some issues with the audio, and also I have like a sore throat, so my voice might sound weird. So the audio is probably shit. Let's just be real here. The audio is bad, and I apologize. But huge, massive shout out to my members, Jay and Slime King 5000, who are absolutely amazing supporters of the channel. Now, I've been with this channel since the beginning. I really do appreciate it, and you guys are the best. But alright, that's all I got for this one. Stay blessed, everyone. Stay happy. Most importantly, stay safe out there. Goodbye.